The product of powers property is when you're multiplying two powers with the same base, you add the exponents. So when you're multiplying two powers with the same base, you add the exponents. So, for example, if you have 2 to the third times 2 to the seventh, that is 2 to the 3 plus 7, which equals 2 to the 10. You can only do that if the bases, and the bases are 2, if the bases are the same. If the bases are not the same, you cannot do this power. So the power of products property states that when multiplying two exponential expressions with the same exponent and different bases, you multiply the bases and keep the exponent the same. Okay, so when multiplying two exponential expressions, and that just means numbers with powers to it, with the same exponent but different bases, multiply the bases and keep the same exponent. So, for example, if you have 2 to the 5th times 10 to the 5th, that's 2 times 10 to the 5th, which is 20 to the 5th. So here are some things that you cannot do. So when you have different bases and different exponents, you cannot do either of the powers. So for example, 2 to the third times 3 to the second, and 9 to the 7th times 6 to the third. Those are different bases and different exponents. So you cannot do anything about those. If you had 2 to the third times 2 to the 6th, then that's when you add the exponents. Or if you have 2 to the third times 12 to the third, that's when you multiply the bases. So the power of powers property states that to find the power of a power, you multiply the exponents. Okay? So to find the power of a power, you multiply the exponents. So for example, if you had 5 squared with parentheses around it to the 4th, because notice how the 4th is like kind of around the parentheses, then that makes it 5 times 5 to the 2 times 4, which equals 5 to the 8th. So the quotient of powers property states that when dividing two exponential expressions with the same base, you subtract the exponents. So when dividing two powers with the same base, remember, it only works if you have the same base, you subtract the exponents. It's very similar to the product of powers, where when you're multiplying two powers with the same base, you add the exponents. When you're dividing two powers with the same base, you subtract them. So for example, 6 to the 5th divided by 6 to the 3rd. 6's are the same, so that equals 6 to the, well, that's also equal to 6 to the 5th over 6 to the 3rd, which is equal to 6 to the 5 minus 3, which is 6 squared.